Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast. And I know what you're wondering. Is everybody here today? Are we all here? Stay tuned to find out. We've got last week's games to go through. We've got this week's games to go through. And everything in between. Before we start, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave us a review where you can leave reviews. And share the podcast around. Right, let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast, the football podcast.
Recording in progress.
No, don't adjust your sets, ladies and gentlemen. I am indeed back on for your viewing and listening pleasure. Obviously, I wasn't here last week to bring you your weekly fix of footballing-based nonsense, but these three lovely gentlemen did a stellar, bang-up job in my absence. So the first thing for me to do after welcoming you along to this week's podcast is to thank these three gentlemen for getting the show done in my absence. So thank you very much, gents. And those three gentlemen are Mr. Andrew Cook, leader of the CookieCast podcast network. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
Lovely stuff. We like to hear it. Mr. Matthew Moore, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. I'm just peachy keen. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least is Mr. Stuart Woodmansey. How are you, sir?
Oh, delighted.
Stuart's reaction there may tell you all you need to know about our last game when we come to it later on in the evening. But that might be giving it away slightly. So yes, just to address the rumours that were from last week, no, I didn't have to go in for any major surgery or anything like that. There's been no huge changes to my personal circumstances.
Whoa. That is a lie, and if she hears that, you're going to get your ass kicked, man.
Well, she being my beautiful now wife.
There it is.
She'd actually heard the podcast when I was listening to it earlier in the week, and she was like, Should I be complaining about these things that are being said at this particular point? And I was like, no, it's all just taken in jest and said with love and understanding. But yes, so
we didn't want to give away your big news. That was your news to drop, and if it maybe sounded like something else, then that's just the way that the listeners took it. I certainly didn't insinuate you were going in for surgery.
I thought we were just going for like the take that policy in the early 90s of if we let the world know that he's now off the market, all our female listeners are going to stop listening. So
I mean, I'd love to think that I'm the sort of the eye candy, as it were, that's bringing the people in. But I think we all know that would be a bullshit. So that's neither here nor there. So, let's dive in, shall we? So, 4 games to go through this week, and then obviously next week's predictions to give. So we'll start with my boys. It was Middlesbrough versus Norwich City. It was the first game on the slate of this week's games, and it was the Friday night fixture. So obviously get the game out of the way, and then I could have the weekend to myself to enjoy and do whatever I thought was the best thing to do. And what an evening it was. Middlesbrough are out 5-1 victors against Norwich City. This was, to say that it was a stroll in the park would probably be a little bit of an insult to strolls in the park, as it was probably a little bit more easy than that. Norwich, potentially one of the worst sides I've seen. I say at the Riverside. I wasn't at the game, but I did watch the game on Sky. It was a very, very insipid performance, shall we say, from the Norwich boys. And it was an ex-Norwich loanee who opened the scoring in the first half. Aaron Ramsey just peeling off to the back post to slot in the ball that had been played across. He dutifully then went to celebrate in front of the travelling Norwich fans, which did not go down well. And some might say that karma came back to bite him in the arse a little bit as he actually got injured later on in the first half. A little bit of controversy as he actually went down injured, and the Norwich players put the ball out. And then later on in the game, when a Norwich player went down, the Middlesbrough players didn't do the same, as the guy who went down was behind the play, so the Borough players didn't even know that he'd gone down. And they actually scored a second goal off the back of it, actually. Hayden Hackney popping up with only his second goal of the season, his first goal at the Riverside, which, as he's a local boy, obviously meant quite a lot to him. Norwich players not too happy with that, a few protests about the fact that the Borough players hadn't put the ball out of play, but nothing the ref could do at that point. There was then a third goal in very quick succession by Cameron Archer. At this point, Norwich didn't really know what hit them. They were very much just up against it, under the cosh. And yeah, they didn't really know what to do. They did manage to get a goal back on the 45th minute by Josh Sargent, just breaking in down the left-hand side and just slotting it straight past his international colleague in the Borough goal, Zach Steffen. Borough re-established the 3-goal lead 6 minutes into injury time. As I said, Aaron Ramsey went off injured in the first half, where Cameron Archer got his second. And then into the second half, Chuba Akpom got his now customary Riverside goal to make it 8 games in a row at home that he'd scored in, and equaling a record held by Tammy Abraham and former Hull City player Jared Bowen as the current record holders for most consecutive home games scored in at 8. And that's where the scoring finished. So, like I say, a very comfortable and emphatic 5-1 win for the Borough, putting a bit of a dent in Norwich's hopes of being able to get into the playoffs themselves. From a podcast predictions perspective, this was possibly a first in the podcast. Every single piece of information that was written down in the book or given as a prediction was a correct answer. So, we all went for different wins. Myself and Stuart had gone 1-0. Andy had gone 2-0. Matt had gone 2-1. So Matt was the only person to give an away goal. And he had gone with Sargent. So, correct. Then we'd all picked guys who scored in the game. I'd gone for Archer. Stuart had gone for Akpom. I'd gone for Archer and Akpom. Andy had gone for Archer and Akpom. So, all that means to the scores, after one game, myself and Stu on 2 points, Andy on 3 points. Matt takes an early lead with 4 points. Well, let me just double check before we crack on. Do we have time? I think we've probably got time to go through the next game just before we have to take a small break. Our next game took us to Saturday evening, where it was the lesser spotted 7:45 Sky kickoff, which was strange. But it took us to Blackburn to see Blackburn Rovers versus Hull City. Is there much to say on this one, Stu?
It was 0-0. Shall we move on?
I think he's kind of nailed that one, as I had the misfortune of actually watching this game, and it wasn't the best, shall we say.
I think from what I saw of it, having been at a beer festival in the afternoon, it wasn't amazing, but it was one of those away performances where if your team grinds out a point, you get a point out of it. The only thing at this stage in the season is it would have been more valuable to Blackburn to have won the game as opposed to Hull actually go there to win it. I definitely think they were set up not to lose, and just see what they could get. They didn't lose. They got a point. That's pretty much as much as I can say on the game.
Yeah, not the finest of fare from a live game perspective on the TV. From a predictions perspective, Stu was the least optimistic on this one and had gone for a Blackburn 2-0 win. So gets himself 0 points for his own team. The three of us, however, had a little bit more optimism in the Hull City boys, as we'd all gone for 1-1 draws. Don't need to give you the goal scorers, as it was 0-0. So myself, Andy and Matt all get ourselves a point. Stu stays on 2. Our next game involves Mr. Moa's team. But before we go through that game, we're actually going to step away for a couple of moments to compose ourselves before we can dive right back in and give you the juicy Nottingham Forest content that you all deserve and that you've all come here for. So, don't touch your dials, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back in just a few short moments.
Recording in progress.
So, after that short musical interlude there, we dive straight back in with, as mentioned before, Nottingham Forest welcoming Manchester United to the City ground. Now, on the predictions, not a lot of us had a great hope for Nottingham Forest in this one. Was that misguided, Mr. Moore?
Not at all. I don't know. Like I didn't watch it. I listened to some of the commentary, but kind of listened to some of the punditry as well. I think Forest set themselves up not to lose, but created a few chances early on, culminating in a contentious handball from Harry Maguire. I mean, it looks like one of those ones where, it made me laugh because it's kind of like been this. It seems to be, after a few criticisms of the kind of VAR and all that stuff this past few weeks, it seems to have been like the refs and the old boy refs. What's his name? Dermot, whatever he is, who does his little bit on Sky Sports, and now back to trying to defend the referees again. I'm like, I've seen that handball this season, and every time I've seen that handball this season, I've seen it given as a penalty. I've definitely seen it given as a penalty as VAR, as a review on VAR. But oh no, of course it wasn't this time. And I don't want to be that. Everyone's going against Forest and stuff like that. But it could have changed the context of the match. It could have changed the context of a team's season. That a team that's struggling at the time. And who's to say they would have scored the penalty? But it looked like a stonewall penalty to me. But it wasn't given. And then I think from then on, really, Man United dominated. They scored just before half time through Anthony. Just nice bit of skill. Nice bit of skill. Save from once again. I think I criticised Navas possibly last week or the week before for when he makes a save, he kind of pushes it generally into more danger, and then it fell to Anthony just for him to tuck it in. And then in the in the list of players that we put down for Man United to score, I very much doubt that anybody had Dalot. Benazid never scored in the Premier League before. Of course, he popped up, because God knows how, with kind of 8 men behind the ball plus the goalkeeper, nobody picked up his run from left back for him to slot the ball past Navas for 2-0. I saw a stat that Forest, I mean, I don't quite understand the running stats, but Forest are either second or third worst, lowest in the league, which must prove they don't run enough. But I mean, when you spend most of your time pegged back in your own box, you've not got really much chance to do a whole lot of running anyway. So, tracking back is not something that Forest players seem to do. either. So, yeah, 2-0 to Manchester United. Navas had an absolute worldie of a game again. Apparently, lots and lots of saves. I think even Bruno Fernandes went up to him at the end and was just like, yeah, fair play. You've absolute awesome performance as a goalkeeper there. I think looking at the kind of fan ratings of them, Navas was like either a 7 or an 8 out of 10, and then the rest of the Forest players were in the 5s. So that kind of shows the kind of level that he was at. But yeah, 2-0 win for Manchester United. Fully expected, but slightly with a twinge of disappointment, as I kind of get the feeling it could have gone better if decisions on certain ways.
Now strap yourselves in, because I want to ask Matt a question. Did you ever feel that you'd get to the point in any season where your team would feel like they were missing Ryan Yates?
Well, no, and I think I've said this before as well, haven't I? Of the kind of thing of, I didn't think that he'd be the most important player for us this season, and I think it's shown, because he didn't start the season well. He got dropped, then he got ill, then he came back into the team after the World Cup and was the real driving force in that kind of run that took him out of the bottom 3. And then he got ill, this mystery illness came back, and the shoulder injuries kicked back in again, and it's coincided with this no win in 11 games now or something like that. It's, if you would have said that to anybody, and even the most diehard of Forest fan, they would have been like, yeah, he's not, he'll be a nice fringe player for the season. He won't be the key to us possibly going down, which is troubling. Considering there doesn't seem to be any kind of light at the end of the tunnel of his injury or illness anyway, kind of thing. And for the amount of money they spent on midfielders, it's not good.
Not good indeed, sadly. From a predictions perspective, obviously Andy was the most optimistic, as he usually is, and had gone for a 1-1 draw on this one. Johnson and Martial to score the goals, so sadly no points for Andy at all there. Myself, Matt and Stu had all gone for Manchester United wins, so we got ourselves a point for the result. Stu had gone 2-1 to United. Me and Matt had gone 3-1 to United. Obviously, none of us got the goal scorer for Nottingham Forest, as there was one. And due to Marcus Rashford not playing, I immediately lost one of my goal scorers. Sadly, I also picked Martial. Stuart picked Fernandes and Weghorst. Matt had picked Martial, Fernandes and Ericsson. However, Paul did pick Anthony on one of his predictions, so I did get myself a bonus point for one of the goal scorers. So 2 points for me from that game, a point apiece each for Stu and Matt, and 0 points for Andy, which takes us to our final game of the week. And as covered on last week's podcast, what a week for me to miss, as it was two of our podcast teams going up against one another. It was Middlesbrough versus Hull City at the Super Cellnet Riverside Stadium, as was back in the day. Sadly, it's not been that for about 25 years. I'll tell you what, we'll split it up. I'll let you talk about the first half, and I can talk about the second half, as that seems to be the way that the game went.
Well, as far as I was concerned, the game finished at half-time, because that's pretty much when City decided to stop playing. It was an intro. I mean, granted, I did actually miss the first 10 minutes, where I understand that Middlesbrough hit the post, so it was probably a good job that I missed that.
It was recent goal machine Hayden Hackney arriving in the Lampard-esque late running to the edge of the box.
Because he'd been for a pie on his way in? Was he that Lampard level, or?
Carmo, probably, yeah.
But yeah, like I expected Hull to get absolutely pantsed in this game, and the first half started to prove me wrong when it was still 0-0 after half an hour, and weirdly the team going forward for the majority of that time was probably Hull.
I said in a text to you that it's not even up for debate. Hull have comfortably been the better team in the first half. They were absolutely bossing it at one point, dictating the pace of the play. Plenty of sort of dangerous-looking balls down the channels. I don't know. You'll have to answer this one. Do Hull play with wingers at the minute?
I mean, they'll play with anyone that's fit at the moment, seeing as we've got no strikers. Seeing as the guys running the wing should be like on the wing, and they're not. They're having to play up front because we've got one guy who's currently playing in midfield, who's probably a recognised striker in Regan Slater, doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and generally when he's having a good game at the moment, tends to coincide with when City play quite well. And to be honest, I thought Slater had a pretty good first half, which was reflected by the rest of the team. Everything seemingly that was of purpose came through him at some point, and it built to a head coming towards half time when on 41 minutes Hull put a corner into the box, whereby Middlesbrough seemed to think, we've seen Hull set piece record this season, let's fucking leave him. And then Simon just popped up, just glancing header right into the far corner to put City 1-0 up into the break, and probably, dare I say it, at that time was a deserved lead.
Yeah, I agree.
Cue the halftime break where Michael Carrick then decides to work his magic with the introduction of Isaiah Jones
and Anthony Dijksteel. So there was an injury just before half time to Borough's right back Tommy Smith, where he went down sort of on the edge of the box, and at one point it looked like it looked like it could be a bit more of an issue than was being let on, as they actually did. I think at one point they tried to give him oxygen, and he actually refused it. So I don't know whether the medical staff just sort of not misdiagnosed the situation, or just made more of the situation than was, because they brought on the stretcher as well, but he was able to leave the pitch of his own accord. And when he was down receiving treatment, Marcus Force also went down. In a similar sort of, it was a similar passage of play actually that they both got into, and neither came back out for the second half. So Isaiah Jones came on for Marcus Force, and Anthony Dijksteel came on at right back for Tommy Smith. And I know that like this saying's probably like thrown about quite a lot in football, but that substitution absolutely changed the game. Isaiah Jones's pace, his trickery down that right hand side, Hull just really couldn't cope with it in the second half. They got their just rewards within 6 minutes of the restart as well. Surprisingly enough, it came from a break where, so I say 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the restart. Sorry, Jones was breaking down the right side. It was a lovely ball that was put into him from Chuba Akpom. The ball was then cut back to the edge of the box, and Lampard-esque, as I said earlier, there he was again, Hayden Hackney arriving late into the box. And his effort was on target, but it took a deflection to take out Darlow's path, and that was the equaliser. In a similar fashion to what they'd done on Friday night against Norwich, that was the start for a bit of a 5-minute blitz, really, in which Hull didn't really know what to hit them. The second goal came on the 58th minute with a Cameron Archer strike, where he got the ball out of his feet lovely and just drilled it across Darlow in the goal.
It was a nice finish through his legs, really, wasn't it? He did well. He did well to bring the ball down at like a tight angle out on the right hand side of the box, and he was almost running out of room. If he'd have put that ball to Darlow's right, it would have gone wide of the goal. The only place that was going in was if he'd have hit it through his legs, which he managed to do perfectly, unfortunately.
It was it's another thing where I sent you a text. I was like, I think that the defender can be a little bit disappointed in himself there. Was allowed himself to get out muscled for the ball, and then obviously just lack of pace. I suppose easiest way to say it. Just outpaced him, but over the sort of 5 yards that it was, you could argue that he should be able to keep pace with him there and just muscle him off the ball, but wasn't able to.
Was that the Sean McLaughlin one?
I believe so.
As in Sean McLaughlin, who they'd just announced earlier in the day has signed a 3-year contract with City. So what a way to celebrate!
Oh dear! And then, like I said, the 5-minute blitz was finished on the 61st minute. I actually sent a text to our group saying, all we need now is a Tuba goal just to set the record or break the record of 8 games in a row where he scored a goal at home. And literally within seconds of those delightful words leaving my fingers, the ball arrived at Mr. Akpom's feet in the box. He got the ball out of his feet and he smashed it into the bottom corner to score for a 9th home game in a row, breaking the previous record of 8, which he held himself along with Tammy Abraham and, as mentioned before, Jared Bowen. And it is the first time that a player has scored in 9 consecutive home games since the championship was rebranded as such back in 2005. After that, the game kind of petered out somewhat. No more goals, but a lot more Middlesbrough chances. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility to say that Borough could have scored another 4 or 5 goals. There was some poor finishing, some good saves by Carl Darlow, but all in all, it was just the stereotypical game of 2 halves, as you might say.
Do you know, for me, where that went wrong, aside from the 6 minutes before you say that, it's never a good sign whether your team are 1-0 up away from home or not when they start to try time wasting from 52 minutes and 3 minutes later they are level. Like, that is a ridiculous tactic. The whole time wasting thing will forever annoy me anyway. I understand why it's a thing, I get why it happens, but 52 minutes is ridiculous. Like, that ball is better served up the other end of the pitch in the corners if you're going to start time wasting that way. Don't dick about with it in your own area, because it seemed that from that point on, every short pass in our own defensive third didn't go to our own players at that point. Every short pass seemed to go wrong.
Yeah, I can sort of see the reason for it. Obviously, some might call it time wasting. I mean, you'd imagine that the sort of the management staff and the coaching staff will look at it as breaking up the play or disrupting the play, disrupting the flow.
I always
don't do it in your own half.
And what I always say about that is that you're not only disrupting the other team's flow of play, you're also disrupting your own. You know, and you end up hoofing it. So, like, you play about it, then you end up booting it as far as you can down the pitch, which inevitably goes back to the other team, and they can launch an attack again, and you start sitting deeper and deeper and deeper. You know, and if you're starting wasting time on 52 minutes, you're just going to be behind the byline by the time 90 minutes comes round if you're going to defend like that, because you're just going to get further and further back. Yeah, it's stupid.
I mean, I know obviously the substitutions for Middlesbrough changed the game, but there was no need for City to sort of change their style. They were coping very well in the first half and linking passes together, nice little periods of play. Never happened in the second half after that. As soon as that started, it just never clicked again. So they obviously had some sort of instruction, like you say, whether it's to disrupt the Middlesbrough play or whatever. But Matt's bang on. Like it's that age-old thing of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they tried and failed fucking miserably. There was no excuse for that second half after the way the first half went. I think, luckily for again, I feel it almost weirdly in a privileged position to say this as a Hull fan, but realistically, win or lose tonight, that game probably means the grand scheme of absolutely naff all. It's probably more important to Middlesbrough to set a marker going down now for what's to come in the playoffs, because not been horrible, Paul. I know it's mathematically possible, but I can't see you catching Sheffield United. Sheffield United are going to lose 4 games in a row.
I mean, I think I've been working for the idea that Borough were in the playoffs since they basically lost against Burnley. To be honest with you, they lost against Huddersfield the game before, and that was kind of the sort of the game that really set back, because they lost and Sheffield United won, and that obviously that 6-point swing, if you like, was basically there. So.
Well, they need to. They're like, to me, like I say, Middlesbrough are the ones that now need to hit that purple patch. The last 2 games would seemingly say they're well on their way with that, but you know, us, like Hull losing that game tonight was 1, probably expected, and 2, again, not mathematically safe, but I'm not particularly worried at this point. Come back to me in a few weeks when the bottom 3 start winning. But yeah, it was no great shakes. It was just disappointing to see them just fold within such a short space of time. I think I'd have probably if that game had finished by the same scoreline and Borough had scored throughout the game, I don't think I'd be quite as annoyed about it. I think what annoyed me was the fact that they played for an hour and a half and Hull fucked it up in 6 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those situations where you just sort of think to yourself, like, they've done so well in the first half. Fair enough, they may have had this game plan of, right, let's look to frustrate them, let's look to break up play. If we can get a goal, awesome, which they'd got in the first half. And it always annoys me that, because you see this sometimes when teams go away from home, they sort of set up to get the goal, like on the counter or like by whatever means possible to that. And then they almost seem to, for want of a better phrase, shit themselves. Because they're like, well, we've got the goal that we wanted now, so what do we do? And I'll never, until the last day that I ever watch football, I will never understand why a team that's on top changes the way that they're playing. It just seems baffling to me. But you see it so often.
It'd have been interesting to see during the first half. Again, nice little bit of link-up play between Pelkas and Traore, and back to Pelkas, who was pretty much clean through on the penalty spot and managed to side foot it wide. If that had gone in, that was a good bit earlier in the half, would they have adopted the same tactic earlier in the game, or would they have carried on pushing from that point? Because the goal coming just before half-time, like, obviously there's natural break in the game, so if there's going to be a change in play, you'd think they'd have that instruction at half-time. If they had scored, I can't remember for the life of me when it was, but maybe sort of like on the half-hour mark, would they have changed that earlier? Because I don't think they would.
No, you're right. And then obviously, like we said, we covered it in again our chat. There was an effort that Hull had. I believe there was still 1-0 up in the second half when Louis Coyle broke through.
Broke through and then nearly broke the corner flag with his shot.
Got as far as the Middlesbrough box and then did what all good centre halves do when they get in the box and just absolutely shat the bed. So
that's at the point where you know when the ball boy down in the sideline is warming up just as he sees Louis Coyle approach the edge of the box.
I'll call it there because we could end up talking about this one all night, to be fair. But from a predictions perspective, Andy was Mr. Diplomatic and had gone for a 1-1 draw to try and keep as many people happy on the podcast as possible. He'd gone for a Fours goal and a Longman goal, so sadly he doesn't get himself any points there. But the rest of us have all gone for varying degrees of Middlesbrough win. I'd gone 2-0. Matt had gone 2-1. Stu had gone 3-0. I had gone for Akpom and Fours to score, so get myself a bonus point there for Akpom. Stu had gone for Akpom to score twice and Fours to score, so gets himself a bonus point there. Matt had gone for Akpom and Ramsey to score. Sadly, Ramsey didn't play in this game as he got injured against Norwich on Friday. He had also gone for Syed Manesh to score 4 Hull, so bags himself an extra bonus point there. So, closing out the week, Mr. Cook, 4 points from 4 games. Very respectable there, sir. Mr. Woodmansey, 5 points from 4 games. I took 7 points from 4 games, but I believe winning for the 2nd week in a row. We just double check the book from the week before. Obviously, I was not here to score it. Oh no, I do apologise. It was Mr. Woodmansey who got the win last week with 10 points. But getting 9 points for a 2nd week in a row is Mr. Moore. He's obviously got his predicting hat firmly on his head this current time. So that's week 35, done and dusted. Like we said at the start of the podcast, 4 games to predict this week. And our first game takes us to Merseyside. Stu will be happy. For Liverpool versus Nottingham Forest. This is our first 3 o'clock Saturday game. Obviously, it's Mr. Moore's team. He will go last. This is Nottingham Forest away from home, ladies and gentlemen. So, I, of course, have not picked them to score. I've gone for a 4-0 Liverpool win, sadly. Gone for Salah to score twice, and then 1 apiece for Gakpo and Firmino. Let's go to Mr. Cook for his input on this one.
One else first.
Oh my!
No, sorry, no, I'm looking at the wrong one. No, 1-1. A 1-1 draw.
I did wonder. Your goal scorers, please.
Diaz.
Ooh.
And you know what's coming. Awonyi.
Hey! Oh, I see what he's done there, kids. He's only gone and led us down the garden path, and then he's thrown in a Awonyi in there just to put the mockers on everybody. Mr. Woodmansey, your favourite team?
Yeah, and after they played Leeds on Monday night, very disappointed that neither team just decided to just fuck off into oblivion. You've been reading my script, because I have, unfortunately for Matt, also gone 4-0 Liverpool. But I've gone 1 for Salah, 2 for Gakpo, and 1 for Big Verge.
I'll take that, because I've got both Salah and Gakpo in my fantasy team, so I'll have that. Another goal for Van Dijk as well. Go on, Matt. Tell us the damage.
You're going to be shocked here. I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
Oh!
I'm hoping that they've used up all their goals and stuff like that, because they seem to kind of go for these kind of big win, then bit of a kind of flub. I mean, we'll probably end up being 4-0, but I've gone for it. I'm feeling optimistic this week. I'm thinking maybe I need to kind of radiate some more positivity. So yeah, I've gone Salah for Liverpool and old boy rule, a 1-0 for Forest.
In fairness to Matt, he's not wrong, because I think that game against Leeds the other night was the first game that they've won since they beat Man United 7-0. So there is method to the guy's madness.
Not only that, I may have to check this stat, but I'm pretty sure that's the first goal they've scored away from home against a team below them in the league.
I mean,
On
this
a
game,
Monday night when the wind is blowing from left to right.
Anfield, so.
So that's our first game, done and dusted. Our next game takes us to Hull, where we see Hull City taking on Watford. Mr. Woodmansey's team, he will go last. I've gone for a 1-1 draw. 2 fan for Hull, Semmer to score for Watford. Mr. Moore.
I've gone for a 2-1 Hull win.
Lovely. Goal scorers?
Syed Manesh and Tufan and Saw for Watford, because they are terrible.
They 100% are. Mr. Cook?
1-0 to Hull, Longman to score.
Yeah. Sorry, who was your goal scorer?
Longman.
Long man came on tonight.
Long
He's back in the squad. Go on then, Stu.
No, so Watford got beat badly by a team below them, I think, this evening. 3-1 at home to Cardiff, so they're clearly going to come to Hull and win 2-0. I've got João Pedro and Davis, just one for Matt there.
Yes, of course. The old boy rule, but not in the way that you would think, ladies and gentlemen.
Podcast old boy.
Yeah.
I've got a guy who was on loan at Forest last season. 2 games left to predict, but before we get into those 2 games, we are just going to take a short break, just before we give you those 2 games. So again, don't touch your dials. We'll be right back.
Recording in progress.
We told you, mere seconds, ladies and gentlemen. So, 2 games down, 2 games to go. Our 3rd game of the week sees possibly the most important game for Middlesbrough between now and the end of the season. Playoffs dependent, as they travel down to Kenilworth Road to take on Luton Town in what could be a 3rd/4th place sort of decide. And obviously this is my team, so I will go last on this one. All I'll say is that this one is being played on a Monday and is live on the Sky Telebox. Obviously, Aaron Ramsey didn't play tonight. Sorry, didn't play against Hull on Wednesday. Not to date the podcast. So may not be fit in time for Monday, but obviously that's a fair amount of days away. So if you did pick him, there's a possibility he might not be in the play. Let's go to Andy for the first pick, or the first prediction.
0-2.
Wow. Goal scorers?
Archer. Tubes.
I like it. Of course, Mr. Akpom coming off the back of the record-setting 9th home game scored in a row. Doesn't like to do the business as much away from home, but let's hope for Andy's sake that changes from next Monday. Matt, what have you got for this?
I've taken into account that it's crucial for both teams, so I've gone for a really, really exciting 1-1 draw. I've gone for Adebayo for Luton.
Yes.
And Chuba for Borough.
Yeah, boy. Mr. Woodmansey?
Very similar. Obviously, it's probably now must win for Luton, which means they probably won't. So I've gone for a 1-1 draw as well. Special shout out, by the way, to Andy Carroll for his effort for Reading tonight, scoring on Wednesday, scoring on 51 minutes and then getting sent off 5 minutes later for appearing to score again, but then only to be discovered to have handballed it into the net. You horrible, lanky piece of... Yes. So I've gone 1-1 and I've gone for Campbell for Luton and Akpom for the Borough.
The only problem is they're starting to set a dangerous precedent with that, because it's like an unofficial VAR, because the ref didn't give it and the lino didn't give it. So who the fucking hell gave it? Because like that, and I think they've got to be really careful with that, because they're like, oh, no VAR, no VAR, but then somebody somewhere, either the fourth official's got eagle eyes and can see it from further away than the other two people who should have been giving it, or someone's watched it on a video.
It's the fourth official.
But yeah, saves you might dirty bastard.
Right, so I'm just checking the stats. So Sheffield United, second of the table, 4 games to play, 82 points. Luton, third of the table, 3 games to play, 75 points. Borough, fourth of the table, 3 games to play, 74 points. So Luton are 7 points behind Sheffield United. Borough are 8 points behind Sheffield United. So if Sheffield United win on Saturday, and they are playing no one, it would appear.
I think they might be playing.
In the FA Cup.
Oh, bloody hell, they're in the FA Cup, the wankers. Right, so
Need to get that game in hand somewhere, don't they? So they can hold it over you until the last minute to secure that.
Regardless of this result, they can't be promoted on. I don't think.
No, because if they're 8 points with 4 games, even if you've only got 3 games, then you can still overtake them by 1, can't you? So they can't be promoted this weekend.
Well, hang on. No, they can't. So, I was going to say, because if it's a draw, technically the most Luton can get to is 82 points.
Yeah.
Borough would be out of it, because Borough would only be able to get to 81 points. So a draw pretty much promotes Sheffield United. So I've gone for a 2-2 draw. I think this is one where it's going to be proper cagey, but then might open out a bit if both teams think they're in with a chance of getting automatic and stuff like that. And I think that'll play very much into sort of like both teams' defensive hands / attacking hands. I don't really know. But yeah, I've gone for a 2-2 draw. I've gone for Morris and Rudacombe Panzu to score for Luton, and Archer and Fours to score for the Borough. Our final game of the week takes us back to Nottingham, where we have Nottingham Forest taking on Brighton and Hove Albion. Mr. Moore's team, he will go last. Stu, what have you got for this one?
A little bit more optimistic this time. I've got 1-1. So I've got a 1-1 for Forest, and Caicedo for
Caicedo?
Yes, that guy.
Moises Caicedo. He is, of course, a defensive midfielder, well known for his goal-scoring prowess. So let's see.
Well, has he ever scored in the Premier League? There we go.
Andy, what have you got for this one?
So this was the one where I had 1-0.
Goal scorer?
Johnson. See, I clearly ruined my own joke by, going off too soon.
This is where Andy goes, Navas.
Stranger things have happened.
He hasn't done recently. So
just tonight, just on Wednesday, for example, a last-minute equaliser from Coventry was scored by the goalkeeper. Let's ignore the fact that he clearly put it in with his hands. That's neither here nor there. It still went down as a goal. So
yeah, Andy Carroll.
they didn't have the fourth official at. Yeah.
No, they decided to not employ the fourth official in this one. For the Nottingham Forest Brighton game, however, I agree with Stu in that I have also gone for a 1-1 draw. I've gone for Johnson to score for Nottingham Forest. And despite what anyone tells me, I will not call this man McAllister, because his name is Alexis MacAllister, as it is two separate words. So Alexis MacAllister, I've got to score for Brighton.
Is that a bit like Brereton Diaz? Or
No, it's not.
Welcome to Paul's pedantic about footballers' names soapbox section of the podcast this week.
Correct. Your point being,
Next week.
Spell alias Sayed Manesh without looking.
Right then, Mr. Moore, it's the last prediction of the week. Give us your thoughts on your own team.
He was brought up in conversation earlier on. He's going to be back to lead the way against Brighton. Gone for a 2-1 Forest win. Mitoma for Brighton. Johnson for Forest. And Ryan Yates to get the winner.
Johnson and the shit out himself, stepping up, bagging himself a goal. If it happens, you'll be hearing it here first, ladies and gentlemen. So that is your week 36 predictions brought to an end. However, for those of you who like new stuff on the podcast, keep your eyes peeled, as next week on the podcast we may debut a slightly new segment. It may be where we hand the reins, so to speak, over to the Cookie Cast podcast producer. I suppose he is the producer, but he's the Dom, if you will, the kingpin, the lynch man, Mr. Andrew Cook. And obviously, we cover my team, Middlesbrough Football Club. We cover Stu's team, Hull City Football Club. We cover Nottingham Forest, Mr. Matthew Moore's Football Club. But sadly, Andy doesn't technically have a football club, so we can't really call on him each week to give us his team's results. So potentially starting next week, we're going to open up the rest of the world, as it were. We're going to allow Mr. Cook to pick a favourite team that he would like to select. We'll give a little bit of a blurb about that particular team and why Mr. Cook's picking it. And then we will all select the result that we think is going to happen that particular week. Now, a suggestion that Mr. Woodmansey brought to the table, well, we'll leave that for if it's needed in one of the future podcasts. But that's another thing to keep your taste buds just tingling away there. And obviously, if it's required, I'll let Mr. Woodmansey give you the details of his thought process on that one. So that's the podcast done for yet another week. All that's left for me to do is thank these wonderful gentlemen once again for joining me to take you through the murky depths of the English Championship, the English Premier League, and potentially some cup competitions if our teams weren't shit enough to not still be in them. So there you go. Join us again next week, ladies and gentlemen, where we'll do it all over again for you lovely, lovely people. But until then, it's tatty bye from all of us. Goodbye.
So there you go, what do you think to that? Another one done, another one gone, another week of games reviewed, another good week of games previewed, predicted, and everything in between. Big thank you for listening, big thank you for watching, and if I can just ask one last thing before you go, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button, share the podcast around, subscribe if you already haven't, check out the website, cookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button, that way you can get in touch with us. That's it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to these grumpy old men talk about football. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.